Okay, we are now live.
Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Julie Mayfield. I'm the chair of the Planning and Economic Development Committee, and I want to welcome you to our November meeting here. I have also just accidentally closed all of my windows associated with this, so I need to pull up my script again really quickly, which I can do. Hang on 1 second and tell everybody how to participate in the meeting today. I'm so sorry, so sorry. Okay, now we're back. All right. Okay, so as I said, to help our audience, so everybody's participating virtually still, and to help everyone along, I will be reading out where we are on the agenda to help everyone follow. Just want to make sure that everyone also knows that these documents are available on the city's website under City Committees, Planning and Economic Development Committee. So you can follow along there. You'll be seeing everything that we have. We are streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city's website. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phoning in by dialing 855-925-2801 and entering the code 8187. So that's 855-925-2801 and entering the code 8187. And just again, welcome to everyone who's with us today. For today's meeting, we will have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. We will have, I think, 3 opportunities for that to happen. I'm looking at the agenda. Yes, we will have 3 opportunities for that to happen. And if you want to do that, please call that same phone number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 8187. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, you will hear a voice say, for more options, please press star. Pressing star will allow callers to continue to listen live and join a speaker queue. Callers should only join the speaker queue during the agenda item that they wish to comment on. If you are watching the meeting through the live stream while you are listening to the meeting by phone, please be sure to turn down the volume on your device. All right, I will now go through and introduce all the committee members and the staff who are participating virtually today, and just ask folks, as we all know, to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. So council and staff, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Vice Mayor Gwen Whistler.
Good afternoon.
Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley.
Hello.
Assistant City Manager Kathy Ball.
Good afternoon.
Director of Planning and Urban Design, Todd Okolachaney.
Hello.
Principal Planner Shannon Tuck.
Hello.
Development Services Director Ben Woody.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Site Planning Division Manager Chris Collins.
Hi, everyone.
Urban Planner Vidila Satvika.
Hello.
And Urban Planner Sasha Vertensky. Sasha here?
I think Stacy Merton is here.
Oh, Stacy's here. Okay, sorry. Stacy Merton, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Stacy.
There we go. Okay, super. Thanks. Okay, now we are ready to dive into the agenda. The first agenda item is approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes or any changes to the motion? Changes to the minutes?
Motion. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as stated. This is Gwen Whistler.
I second, Antoinette.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote to approve the minutes, which always seems very silly in a committee of 3 people, but we need to do it anyway. Vice Mayor Gwen Whistler.
Aye.
And Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley.
Aye.
And I am also an aye. So the minutes are approved. All right, next we will move on to revisions to the Homestay Ordinance. I'm sure nobody is really interested in this topic at all. It should go very fast, has gone very fast over the 5 years that I have been on council. Shannon Tuck, lead us into this conversation. And you are muted. There we go. We still cannot hear you. There we go.
How's that? All right. Okay. Well, I do hope that I can be relatively brief in my introduction. So it has been a while since we've talked about homestays, though, so I'm going to just take a moment to kind of catch us all up on where things were left and then talk about the proposed changes. So to begin, in 2018, the city adopted a definition of kitchen, and that definition was intended to classify any space that had any one of what we had identified as the three main features of a kitchen present. So that would be, those three features were a sink, a full-size refrigerator, and a stove. And if you had any one of those three things, you were classified as a kitchen, or that space was classified as a kitchen. And this was done to both control the conversion of existing housing units into homestays, but it was also to provide greater clarity between different forms of lodging. So in 2018, that definition came in with some of the changes that were adopted that put more restrictions on hotel development and other forms of lodging. The definition proved to be somewhat problematic, however, for both staff and community members. So work began almost immediately on revising that definition. And there was some evolution of the thinking as it related to that definition. But where we left off in 2019 was to allow a sink and a refrigerator in a space, but not a stove. So we were going to use that stove as that like sort of linchpin item that if there was no stove, it really just wasn't a kitchen. Now, since 2019, we've continued to talk amongst ourselves, amongst the staff, and also with representatives of the Homestay Network. And we wanted to kind of better understand what our common goals might be. And I think it's fair to say that we all shared the goal that we wanted to expand the economic opportunity to a greater number of residents. But we really wanted to control for potential nuisance issues, as well as losing a significant amount of housing stock. And as a result of those conversations, we're now proposing some changes that include a more permissive definition for kitchen that would allow a homestay owner to move between long and short-term renting without issues. So one of the things that we heard a lot from the community was that it would be really great and in terms, and also to further goals of providing housing, if we could just have the kitchen, it would allow us to move back and forth between long-term renting and short-term lodging. So how that would work is if you had that space and you had your homestay permit and you rented short-term for a period of time, say in the fall, and then you had family members come and stay with you for 2 months, you could take it kind of off the listing for a couple months and then you could put it back on, and it just sort of allowed for that flexibility. But in exchange, we really, in order to try to control for the loss of housing units, we propose to add a limit on the number of homestays that a person may have. And that limit would be one per person, household, corporation, LLC, or trust. So to accomplish this, we're proposing two changes. The first is to explicitly state in the standards that only one permit per person, household, corporation, LLC, or trust would be permitted. And then secondly, to require that a property owner who doesn't live on the property that has the homestay to be a co-applicant on that application, along with the resident manager. So if you are a tenant and you rent a house and you want to run a homestay and the owner agrees to allow you to do that, the owner has to be a co-applicant. And this is how we would track investors and their homestays. So if you were a property investor and you owned 5 or 6 properties, and you and one of your tenants decide to do a homestay in, say, house number 1, then your name is on that application. And now if anybody tried to come in and pull a homestay permit from any one of the other 5 homes that you own, we would be able to track that and sort of render those other properties ineligible for homestay. So it preserves all of those other properties as housing. This also has the added benefit of allowing the property owner to participate in the management of the homestay property operation and to have the flexibility to work out whatever arrangement works best for both the property owner and the tenant. So we learned through these conversations that there's a lot of different kinds of arrangements. In some cases, the tenants live for free for their assistance in managing the homestay, or maybe they're entirely in charge of it, but the property owner maybe charges a little more rent. because that tenant has the ability to generate more income. So there's all kinds of different iterations for that. And so we just kind of wanted to get out of the middle of it and allow those individuals to work out the arrangement that works best for them. The other substantive change that we're proposing is to no longer allow accessory structures to be used as homestays. So now that we clarified that a homestay can have a kitchen, we didn't want to open up the opportunity for accessory dwelling units to be converted to a homestay, those detached accessory dwelling units, I should say, recognizing that these spaces can more reasonably be used as independent dwelling units. So we're trying to preserve those units for that infill or affordable housing. So those are the four big changes: the changes to the kitchen definition, the explicit statement that you only get one permit per person, household, LLC, trust, etc., requiring that the property owner be a co-applicant, which also gives them some new rights and responsibilities that they may not have had before, and then to clarify that detached accessory structures could not be permitted to be used for homestay spaces. In addition to those four big changes, there are a few other clarifications that I don't believe really materially change how we've been enforcing or regulating homestays. They're really meant more for clarification, but I'd be happy to go over those if anybody was interested. So we are asking that this committee support these changes and recommend to the City Council to adopt the proposed ordinance as proposed. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for this, Shannon. I know this has been a long, painful, uncomfortable process. So how many current detached accessory dwelling units are permitted that will be basically allowing to continue?
So they're not necessarily accessory dwelling units. In some cases, they may have been at one point in time, and then they took out their stove or their kitchen or whatever. Right. But some of them were just sort of like studio structures that they turned. I think it was somewhere around a dozen. Does that sound about right, Chris? Chris would probably know better than me.
Thereabout. We could certainly obtain an exact number for you on that.
No, that's okay. Okay, that's fine. And then relative to those, allowing them to maintain that permit, given the fact that, now people will be able to kind of flip in and out of homestay, is there a period of time, like for these detached units, if they're not being used as a homestay, that we would, say, okay, now you need to comply with the current regulations?
Yeah, that period of time is 180 days. And that applies to all non-conforming uses, so not just homestays.
Okay, so basically it would be considered a non-conforming use, and if they're not using it as a homestay for 180 days. Okay, that's
well,
great.
Let me just clarify one thing though. However, the homestay permit is annual permit, so it's good for 12 months. Mm-hmm. So we do clarify that people can move between long and short-term renting. So if you have a homestay and say you operate your homestay for a few months, then you have somebody who says, well, I'd really like to live there for 6 months, 7 months. You can go ahead and do that and then go back to short-term renting. So that 180-day period wouldn't necessarily apply in that case, in that scenario, because you're still maintaining your homestay permit.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that. So.
Okay. You helped me a lot with your explanation of the owner and on-site manager. The staff report to me didn't justify, I didn't understand the thinking. So I would just sort of challenge you to, well, maybe it's too late because this is going to come to council tomorrow night, right?
Oh, no, it goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just,
it'll be a while.
To really explain because to me, it was like, I didn't really see the benefit. I mean, to me, it seemed more permissive, but actually your explanation of having the owner and the resident manager both be co-applicants is actually more restrictive. And so I guess I would just encourage you to maybe beef up the staff report to better explain that. Because that's not going to be something that, people are going to fully get. But your explanation was fabulous. And because I was going to be like,
Well, it is both. It is both more restrictive and more permissive. So requiring the property owner to be a co-applicant is more restrictive in the sense that that is an important piece of restricting the number of permits to property investors. So that's an important component there. But it is also more permissive in that currently today, we do not allow property owners to participate in the management of a homestay. So we have said that the resident manager, whoever is the permanent full-time resident of the property, is the one responsible for the operation of the homestay. So we've tried to kind of keep property owners out of the mix in order, thinking that it would help those tenants, build more capital so that they could be property owners someday. So the idea was give them the opportunity, not let the property owners. But what we find is that on a practical level, it doesn't work anyway. So this way,
they're cutting their own deals anyway.
Yep. And so,
and I also think the good thing about this is it makes it guarantees that the property owner understands how the property is being used.
Yes.
Because ultimately, the property owner is the one responsible. If they got in trouble, if the property's in trouble, we ultimately go to the property owner. So I think it's actually helpful to, again, just make sure that communication loop is closed.
Yeah.
So, okay. But anyway, I would just, as I was reading this, I didn't understand the thinking. And so I guess I would just ask that we kind of relook at the staff report and see if there's a way to kind of explain the thinking in a little more depth. But it's not critical. Thank you.
Got it.
So Shannon, I have a question, on the kitchen piece. So one of the big changes here is that homestays may now have kitchens that have stoves, that have refrigerators, and that is to, in part, facilitate this movement back and forth between long-term and short-term. And
yes.
Okay. All right.
It was also a very challenging thing from an enforcement standpoint. Yeah. So it kind of just takes that issue out of the equation.
Yeah. And I do think, and I know from personal experience this year, the fact that, that a lot of homestays did try to turn into long-term rentals during COVID. And, that was a way for a number of our homeowners here to continue to get income. I myself am living in one of those very, very units right now that went from a short-term to a long-term. And so I think this will be good for our community in the long run, and appreciate all the work that it took to get to that place. And I don't have any questions about the ordinance. I want to say again, thank you to you and to Chris and to Ben, who I think is all the staff members who have been involved in this long process. And then also to the Homestay Network and the leaders, particularly the leaders of that, Jackson, Tierney, and Bob, who have really sort of hung in there with us and continued to push forward these changes that will get us back where we need to be on this. So just thanks very much. It's this kind of advocacy is hard to do, and I know I've had. Everybody has lost their temper some in this, but I'm appreciative and amazed that we did not get any pre-submitted comments for this meeting, and that I think is a real testament to the work that you've done to bring the city and the Homestay Network together. So just want to thank you. Antoinette, any questions or comments from you? Okay. All right. So we do have public comment on this. So Jenna, is there anyone on the line?
We do. We have one caller.
Yes, hello. This is Jackson Tierney. Hopefully folks transmitting okay. Hi, Julie and Gwen and Councilwoman Annette. We have not had a chance to meet, but I hope to do that in person one of these days. My name is Jackson Tierney. I am the leader of the Homestay Network. We have 702 permit holders. And homestays are a very important side hustle for folks in town here. 62% said that they need this for 25% more of their income, so certainly to make ends meet. And 1 in 5 are on Social Security. So yes, we've been working on this a long time, 2.5 years, and under the current kitchen rule, literally there were hundreds of kitchens that were destroyed and dwelling units dismantled. And with today's ordinance, that will change that. Today's draft amendment fixes the kitchens, but goes well beyond that, as Shannon said, and it rightly allows dwelling units to be used as homestays. Why is this important? Well, as Julie indicated, the pandemic has really put an exclamation point on the need to be flexible. We've seen first responders, traveling nurses, elderly parents, child suddenly back from college that all need separation from the main house and also need a full functioning kitchen. So the Homestay Leadership Network supports these changes. We support the new definition of kitchen, dwelling unit, homestays, and lodging. We support the need to affirm this is our primary residence and the continuance of 2 forms of identification. We support the city's codifying the allowance of a co-applicant owner with a co-applicant renter. And we also support the limit to 1 of these. I do want to quickly add that we do not support the ban on banning accessory structures to be used for homestays, but appreciate the grandfathering clause to allow these to, who have those, to continue to operate. The city needs to recognize that a ban on homestays in accessory structures means that less of them will be built. And of course, the meeting won't be complete unless I mention Portland. They took the cap on that and saw their homestays go from 30 permits a year to over 600 per year, and have produced over 3,000 ADUs in the last 5 years. And on a population basis, that's still 3x times what we have here. So in conclusion, we appreciate everybody's work. Just the staff letter that this is authored with Shannon Tuck and Todd and Chris and Ben to have the joint resources of the planning group and the development services, I think is extremely important. Oftentimes the handoff between planning and development services, the communication is not as crisp as it needs to ensure compliance. So I think this goes a long way to helping that situation, and we just appreciate very much the staff's willingness to listen to us and work together to improve all of our communities across the city. And I'll say one last thing. We had a meeting 2 years ago with 8 stakeholders, including neighborhood groups, affordable housing, city staff, and others. And as part of that, we had recommended a short-term rental advisory committee be established. And we still think it's a good idea, and we may want to consider that as we go forward to not only keep the dialogue going, but to ensure other stakeholders are brought into the conversation as well. So again, I thank you for your time and look forward to working on this and also working to improve our enforcement and compliance of whole house short-term rentals throughout the community, and working with Airbnb's new city portal, which will allow sharing of data. So we want to thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Anyone else on the line, Jenna?
That was it.
Okay, and I actually just want to follow up on that last thing that Jackson said, maybe somebody else on the phone. So it sounds like Airbnb has some new mechanism that might help make our enforcement of whole house rentals better, easier. Can someone, Chris or Shannon, speak to that?
They, there we go, I'm unmuted. They have a web portal up now asking for folks to express their interest in participating in this program, which I believe Raleigh is the first state in North Carolina to get involved with. We have reached out to them through that portal, but we haven't heard anything back yet.
Oh, I see. So it's a portal for cities to come in and say, hey, we want to try to figure something out here.
But
Yes.
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the premise of this program is that Airbnb would require that a user of their website provide proof of having a lawful permit before they get to use it. So rather than us having to kind of chase down all of these listings, they would be part of our enforcement process.
I see. And so then if Asheville is part of this program, that would be the only way that someone could list their property. They couldn't go outside of that and list it somehow.
Well, one of the arguments against doing this is that it would just move those users to a different platform that isn't as rigorous. Yeah. But I think Airbnb has had enough attention from cities that they are willing to consider this now. I know that they have entered into programs like this with certain other cities as part of their settlements with the legislation that was taken against them. But now it seems like they're broadening that potentially.
Yeah. Well, and they still have the vast majority of the market share, right? I would assume. So, yeah. Okay, well, that's great. This is a momentous moment, as I like to say. All right, is there a motion to adopt the proposed changes and recommend them on to council?
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation and move it to city council to adopt the zoning text amendment modifying standards for homestays.
Is there a second?
A second.
Great. And we'll do a roll call vote. Councilwoman Whistler?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mosley?
Aye.
And I am also an aye. So that has passed and on to council. Again, thanks to everyone. I'm sorry I will not be able to vote on this when it finally comes to council. One little thread that's remains unwrapped, but this will have to be good enough. So
Thank you.
all right. Moving on to our next item is the Urban Centers rezoning update. And I'm not sure, Vidila, Todd, who's going to take this?
I think I will, unless Todd has some.
You can. You are really, can you lift up your microphone maybe?
Yes, is that better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Great.
Padilla, take it away.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Vidila Sadika with Planning and Urban Design. We came and presented to PED 10 months ago, but it's been a while, and VJ has been replaced with Council Member Mosley. So if you don't mind, I'll give a quick overview. Okay. So as part of the city's comprehensive plan, the plan adopted policies and considerations on how to deal with the city's growing population. A key consideration from that document is looking at a higher intensity use along our transit corridors. Many of these corridors, Patton Avenue, Tunnel Road, they have a lot of commercial uses that are primarily single use, and the land uses are not that efficient. They're large parking lots, many of the time of the year not being fully utilized. So one concept was creating this urban centers initiative. And I will share my screen to show a couple images as I'm chatting. Actually, let me share my whole screen. Okay. So this initiative calls for creating urban centers, which would be mixed-use districts that would allow for housing and commercial office retail uses in different parts of the city. As part of the sort of first step in implementing this after the comprehensive plan was adopted, it was decided that we would prioritize the urban centers that have the most bang for the buck for the city so that we can put our limited staff capacity at work. And we've chosen these 4 nodes that you can see on the screen that include the Patton Avenue site on the west, Merriman Avenue on the north, and then Tunnel Road and Swananoa on the east side. The line that you see, or the sort of teal colored lines, are the transit corridors that have higher frequency of use. We call them our high frequency transit services in Asheville, where you get at least 30-minute transit service. And so the idea is that these are the places where we should create rezoning so that we, in time, start to see a greater intensity of development with housing along transit corridors where people can get to work downtown more easily without having a car. So that's where sort of the development of it came from. In the time since we started, we've put out some draft zoning standards that we can talk about the details of them. We've met with community members and businesses and developers and received a lot of input. I'll say a couple things. First of all, housing in these districts is currently allowed. So in one sense, what we're trying to do is create stronger incentives so that larger projects effectively are required to integrate housing into them. And we think that our standards will help. And the way we're doing that is by, I'll go into a little bit of my minutia right now, is saying that if you have a large redevelopment, we will allow you to have the first 5,000 square feet of a commercial space, but for every 1,000 square feet, in addition to 5,000 square feet, you need to provide a housing unit. So it's really an incentive-based system that says if you want a 30,000 square foot building, then you're going to have to provide 25 apartments if they're market rate. And if they're affordable, we actually, you don't have to provide as many units. So we're trying to prioritize that as well. Let's see here. I want to highlight that since we met with you in January, I'll stop sharing my screen now since you're seeing it all. We've met with community members and in particular with the Emma community that has specifically expressed concerns about the Patton Avenue site. And let me go back to sharing my screen so you can see another image of where this site is. A lot of screen sharing here, sorry for the back and forth. And here it is. You should see it now. This is a page from our Equity Toolkit, which is a document that looks at, it forced us to ask lots of questions about this urban centers initiative to figure out what the possible impacts could be to neighborhoods, what we're proposing, who does it really benefit, how are people benefited. And anyway, this is one slide, one image showing that the urban center is on Patton Avenue here, and it includes multiple parcels, not just the large KMart parcel that most people are familiar with, but also the Save More and properties near there and others in between them. And the Emma community, which is about a quarter mile away from the Patton Avenue site. You can see this is the border of the city. They've expressed concerns how this rezoning to urban centers has potential negative impacts on them. And particularly, they're concerned that property values could increase and create difficulty for them as they see a similar increase in cost of living pressures in Emma, which is in the county, but is very close. They're requesting that we remove this node from the initiative in order to have more time to work with the city and I think work on a citywide anti-displacement strategy. They appear to be okay with a redevelopment that can happen at the site. They specifically think that it could be detrimental if our new zoning regulations are in place, because the idea is that it would require a greater intensity of development, a larger investment, and that larger investment would play out more negatively for them. That's one issue that we want to talk through with you. And the other that came up at the council check-in, I'm back on this map. You should see it still here. We were talking about, this was during the hotel moratorium conversation, but we were talking about the Tunnel Road, Chuns Cove Urban Center, and how we're proposing to allow hotels on this Tunnel Road corridor. And Council Member Whistler suggested that we remove the part to the south and South Tunnel Road that's shaded here in a red, which on our future land use map is Town Center, which is similar to this urban center. It's basically a higher intensity mixed use development. And so if we sort of wanted to get your thoughts on whether or not we should add that to the urban center initiative potentially as a part of a phase 2 project that could also go with any other changes potentially with Patton Avenue if we do that, or other changes that you might suggest. So I'll stop for now and see if you have any questions.
But Vidila, if I could just add one other point, as staff has been meeting with representatives from both the Emma community and Burton Street neighborhood, and we do have a formal request, which we've noted in our staff report, from the Legacy Neighborhoods Coalition to remove the KMart node, former KMart node on Patton Avenue from the urban center's rezoning.
So I don't have a problem taking that out, but I mean, does that just what could someone do to that property then, right now?
The concern...
We could build another Kmart?
Right, so the risk in removing that and not moving forward is that they could submit an application for a typical development that we allow in highway business zoning, which could be, similar to any other development that you see currently on Patton Avenue.
Hey, Vidila, use your mic again.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so the risk is that you could see similar development. They wouldn't be required to provide housing. They could do a similar, big box style without the pedestrian infrastructure that we're looking for. That's the risk, or the concern, and whether or not, how that relates to the city council goals and vision, which we're trying to achieve here.
Right. So right now, the Patton Avenue is highway business, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm just COVID maybe has helped, sort of tamp down an idea of development, but that one scares me the most in the sense that it's empty. I mean, Kmart's closed down this is not the mall or other places that still have businesses in it. I mean, that is not being utilized. I want to be responsive to Emma and Burton Street, but it's like, is there not any compromise we can come up with associated with that without just taking it off the table? I mean,
So
are they not nervous that this is going to just turn into another Kmart?
So Gwen, I think the compromise, and correct me if I'm wrong, Todd and Vidila, is that if we create this phase 2, if we leave it on the table but move it into a phase 2 in order to give those conversations more time, help address the concerns, then that kind of standard development could not happen. Is that correct? Because it remains under the expectation of rezoning. Is that right?
We do have a current zoning application, a rezoning application from the city for that property. There is a standard in the Unified Development Ordinance within our zoning code that says that if something like this, that if we have an open rezoning application, that we cannot accept an application to redevelop that property. So there is that provision currently in our Unified Development Ordinance, which would prevent an applicant or a developer from submitting an application while we have an open rezoning application for that property. It's also my understanding that the Kmart building itself, it does have a long-term lease still, that they are still paying monthly rent on the property. Now, again, we're obviously not the private developer here. I'm not sure that there could be an opportunity for Ingalls, for example, to buy out Kmart at some time if they wanted to build an Ingalls there. But we have not received any indication that has or will happen in the near future, but it could.
So if we were to put that in this phase 2, then they would still be under this, sort of moratorium on developing, because we would still be considering it for rezoning.
Todd, has that been determined? I'm not sure if we have completely clarified that. I think the idea is if this is not an open application, if we remove, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if we completely understand that yet. Todd, I don't know if you have got any more clarification from legal, but it's my understanding if we remove this from the open application, right, if we say that Patton Avenue is not moving forward, that application is closed, and we may have it in our plan as a phase 2, but until we open up another application, it is closed and development can occur. But again, I would defer to legal. I don't think we can leave an application open for 5 years and say that we have some vision that we're going to change things here, and so nobody can develop the site. I think that's the concern legally, that we can't do that.
And Vidila's right that we do need some clarification, I think, still from the city attorney's office. But I think our understanding is that recommendation is that we should develop a specific time frame to work with the Emma and Burton Street neighborhoods and the Legacy Neighborhoods Coalition. And similar to what we did with the hotel development moratorium, where we had a very finite schedule and a scope of work that we would conduct during that schedule. And I think we need to do the same thing for this site as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we're not talking about closing this zoning application that you have, but actually, in fact, leaving it open and adding a couple of sites to it, quite possibly, right, Todd? The one being that you just mentioned, the mall site, but the other that we discussed during the hotel moratorium conversation was the River Ridge Shopping Center as well. So, basically our big shopping centers from the 70s or earlier that have enormous surface parking lots, which are a disaster from a climate change, heat island, stormwater runoff impact, low single-story development, which is a disaster from a density, we need more housing standpoint. I mean, all of these types of developments are disasters, and that's what people built in the 70s, and that's what needed to be built. But we know different now, and we are a city. We have to remember we can't grow out. We cannot annex. We have to grow up. And so, if we're ever going to share the property tax pie, if that's going to grow by getting more people in here, this is one of the key ways that we're going to have to do it. And I appreciate, and I have not been in any of these conversations with the Emma community or the Legacy Neighborhoods Coalition. I appreciate the concerns that they have. I trust that we will figure it out. And I assume the county is in those conversations as well, of course, because Emma is in the county and not in the city. I think there also could be some changes at the state level that need to happen to really make this effective. But sitting here today, I cannot support taking this parcel out of this zoning. If it gets redeveloped, and again, I want to be clear here, Ingalls owns this property, right? So Ingalls owns this property. And if it's taken out, Ingalls will do what Ingalls does, which is they will build a big store. There will be other things in the shopping center, and it will still have massive surface parking lot and absolutely no residential. And that is not what we need in our community right now. So, or actually going forward. So I can't support taking it out. I do support, Todd, you're in very intentional conversations with the communities to figure out how we can support them. But ultimately, this site has to be redeveloped in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, the way I feel about this is, if we can do as Vidila and Todd suggest, is that somehow we can say, okay, this won't be it's still being considered for rezoning, and here's this property may get some tweaks, maybe a little bit different, et cetera. I don't know what you do, urban center 2.0 or something. But to just take it out and allow for redevelopment, I'm just very concerned about that. I mean, to Julie's point, and I think to staff's point, it's like, I recognize there are concerns here, but I have a very big concern if this gets redeveloped as highway business.
Excuse me, Gwen. Sorry. Is there a particular timeline or restriction we are dealing with? Because I can say, as someone whose former community has been gentrified, I think if we ask some folks, we're able to determine, able to see what's for the greater good. But if I live in one of those two areas, I would believe that I'm always being asked to sacrifice what is best for our community for the greater good. So, and again, I'm new to the process. But I would like to be in on more discussions, because I believe if you probably ask some people, they would go, actually, I would rather see an Ingalls that's closer by. That's just my thought on it.
Yeah, so just to be clear, there are two Ingalls within a half a mile of this site, right? Or maybe a mile. So it's not a matter of not having an Ingalls. That's just to be, it's what the Ingalls looks like.
And
the concern from the community members is essentially we're opening the door to gentrification that will at some point make it unaffordable for me to continue to live in my neighborhood. It is going to force me out of the city.
And I get that. And again, this is a problem that's happening all over Asheville. Asheville is not unique. It's happening all over the country. The tools that are available to governments to address gentrification are some of the most effective tools are not tools that are available to us right now. And, so this is an additional challenge for us. I am convinced that taking this property out and letting it be developed just as a regular Ingalls would with a huge surface parking lot is not going to slow gentrification in Asheville. I mean, Burton Street, we had a chance to save Burton Street 10 or 12 years ago, and we lost it. I mean, that's my view of it. I mean, not that it's a lost neighborhood, it's a wonderful neighborhood. And there are a lot of people who still live there who have lived there for many, many years. But there are also $400,000+ homes in Burton Street right now. So, I think I understand the concern. I just don't think that taking this parcel out of this zoning is going to fix that problem.
Well, so I know you want to, move this on but I mean, I would say what I'd like you to come back and see if we can find a way to delay the Haywood Street property, but still keep it as, sort of consideration that it's going to be rezoned so that we don't get it developed underneath us.
You mean Patton Avenue?
I'm sorry, Patton Avenue. I don't know what I said. And then, and really, and the same with the additions of the mall and River Ridge. Again, if we can put some time frames around that and go ahead and say these are being considered for rezoning and to kind of put the halt on development, but I'm not ready to take it out without that provision. I mean, I get it, and I want to be responsive, et cetera, but I do not want that thing redeveloped as highway business. And I'm more concerned about that property, like I said, because it's empty. And,
So what I hear is adding 2 nodes to urban centers and moving the Patton Avenue node to the time frame of those, perhaps in 4 to 6 months or something, and give us some more time to have conversations. And
yes, I think that's right. And the other thing I guess I would encourage us to do is, is there another zoning category, perhaps even one that we don't have, that might help address the concerns. So highway business is not ultimately the answer for this property. It's too inefficient. It's too wasteful of everything. Most importantly, land, which we don't have very much of. It's too environmentally damaging, all of those things. But is there something between that and the urban centers that would help address some of the concerns? Maybe for that particular piece, if it's, I don't know, slightly, I don't know. I don't know what it could be, but are there governments around that are effectively using zoning to help fight gentrification?
Well, I'll say first of all that the development that is likely to occur through the zoning standards that we've developed is not like Biltmore Town Square, that is very urban, pretty much 3-story throughout. We can't require that, and that really requires a developer to come in with a vision that trying to create a sense of place like that. The way we've developed our standards, you could imagine, let's assume Ingalls develops, and the housing is on the same building or not. So it might have a typical Ingalls that has more of a form-based code element, It would have more streets and sidewalks connecting it to the nearby streets, more street trees, and there would be housing units on the property somewhere. And those housing units would have to be built in accordance with the form-based code, right? So they would have a look that is more urban. We'd start to move in that direction, but it could be a very large, not quite the same big box, but it could be a large grocer with some housing, say 25 housing units, or 30, 40 housing units on it, which is not really what you think of when you think of sort of like urban mixed use development, right? So I just want to clarify that, because we've been pushing for a real urban product here, but realizing the reality of our suburban corridors, which is not as dense, and the land value isn't at what we see in bigger cities where they have a much more urban product. So, both from the development side, we've moved in their direction to allow for greater flexibility so that you have that mixed use, but it's not quite Biltmore Village or Biltmore Town Square.
Not as intense as Biltmore Park.
Right.
Yeah. I was just going to ask something. Shoot. Oh, so you said in your presentation, Vidila, that, we requires residential, and if they're going to do affordable, then they can do fewer units. Is there a way to flip that incentive somehow so that we're actually incentivizing them to build more units of housing than less? And more units of affordable housing than less? I don't know what that would be. You don't have to figure it out, but I would certainly be interested in exploring that.
We can think about that. It's, I guess, initially the thought is the cost of development is about the same, but you're not going to get as much for it. So it's tricky to ask to figure out a way how they would build more of something that they're going to gain less from.
Well, maybe there's an incentive that can be made available on the commercial part of the development, or I don't know, faster permitting, or I don't know, something where there's a gain for the developer somewhere else.
Okay, I'll add in our proposed language, we're not counting commercial development that is 1,000 square feet. So we're encouraging smaller units to allow for smaller neighborhood retail. So if they want to build, 1,000 square foot small retail, that's not going to count against them for their commercial.
Okay.
Just a quick update here too. I'm not sure. I know there's at least one resident from Emma community, one of the representatives, Andrea Golden. I'm not sure if she's able to call in, but she emailed me during the meeting and just wanted to make it clear, in case she's not able to call in, that they're asking for, they're not asking for the Patton Avenue node to be removed permanently from the urban centers, but just during phase one, so that it would allow staff to continue to work with them and county staff on mitigation strategies related to some of the equity issues that we identified in our racial equity toolkit. So just wanted to make that clarification, that the community is not asking for us to permanently remove the Patton Avenue node, but just from this phase one, and then come back at a later date if we're able to.
So I think I know Gwen and I at least support that, and
right. Just as long as it can't get developed, as its current zoning. I mean, if there's something we can do for that, but if putting it in phase two basically opens the door for development as highway business, it's going to be hard for me to support that.
Yeah, I'm hearing that it won't. I'm hearing maybe we're not 100% sure, but if we get a timeline, I mean, clearly you can't just lock a property up for 5 or 10 years. Although I will add that developers are are free to come forward with proposals that actually meet the future land use map and not have this fight. If they want to do that, we would invite that. for sure on all the other sites, and maybe even this one too. So you can't lock it up, but maybe we can get clarification on that as well. Maybe now is a good time to open public comment see if there are people on the line. Okay, Jenna, do we have anybody on the line?
Yeah, we have one caller.
Great.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Okay, this is so bizarre. I've never participated in a meeting like this before. This is Andrea Golden. I live in the Emma community. I just want to thank the staff for working with us over the past year. We put a lot of work into getting this far. And just to kind of repeat and make sure that it's really clear that, yes, I live in the Emma community and can speak on behalf of the Emma community, but we're also working very closely with Burton Street community and with the entire coalition of legacy neighborhoods. And that's really important for us to make sure that that's front and center, because we recognize that Emma is a county neighborhood, and we're also in coalition with neighborhoods around the city and the county who have seen the historical impact of things like zoning and redevelopment in a way where then 10 years later and generations later, we look back and say, how did we let that happen? And we feel like now is another moment to acknowledge, while the city is grappling with its development needs, that we don't want to be making decisions that again will be lamented a generation from now. And so city staff had gone through an equity analysis of this rezoning proposal, and the staff's analysis revealed significant disproportionate impact on the Patton Avenue redevelopment and rezoning as compared to the other sites, which is why we made the recommendation and the ask to pull the Patton Avenue site off of phase one, because we really feel deeply that if an equity analysis reveals an equity issue, that needs to lead to action. And this site cannot be treated the same as the other sites, because that's where the trust is broken between community and government, when there's analysis done and studies done, but it doesn't translate into a change in action. And so the action that we are asking for is, again, not to cancel the rezoning, but to pull the Patton Avenue site off of phase one so you can move forward with the other sites, as city staff has acknowledged is very important, while working with the community through the Legacy Neighborhoods Coalition. And we have submitted a request for that coalition to be recognized as a commission that would work with the city and the county, so that together we can identify mitigation strategies and anti-displacement strategies. And we acknowledge the struggle of coming up with local ways to face that when we're dealing with state binding legislation. We're not naive about that. We are deep in study and working with our own consultants on how can we create these strategies that will work for our community. And we just want to be really clear. We don't want to be positioned in this as just anti-development, as just pull it off the list. But we do believe that there is a real opportunity for the city and the county to collaborate with communities like never before, and for us to have a seat at the table to co-create these strategies that include zoning, and thinking about zoning in a creative way, so that we can celebrate the success of the future development of our city and not look back and wish that we had done things differently. So just to be clear, and we appreciate that staff is bringing our recommendation to put off of phase one, and we really look forward to the opportunity to collaborate and to find these solutions together. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Andrea. That's all great to hear. And I think we would all agree that if the equity toolkit shows that there's a problem, then that tells us the direction that we need to go, as you said, to find the tools to address the concern, so that we don't just keep doing what we've always done. So I appreciate that. Jenna, anybody else on the line?
That was our only caller.
Okay, great. Just out of curiosity, Todd and Vidila, did the equity toolkit show issues or concerns with any of these other parcels from an equity standpoint?
Well, I can go through the equity toolkit a little bit. I think it's it's difficult, when you look at data, I was just sort of looking through while Andrew was talking, some things that jump out are that there is a much higher Latin American population, Hispanic population around the Patton Avenue site as compared to our other sites. So, that's a reality that's there. It has within the area a lower median household income. So, right, those issues lead into this vulnerability and map that we created based on some analysis that Portland did that shows districts in the city. I'm trying to look at it, trying to find it while I'm talking to you, that highlight locations where communities are more susceptible to gentrification due to education, income, race, et cetera. And actually, the Emma community is I think the most significant one was sort of the what's it called? Just east of the river. I'm going mind blank right now.
Yeah, it's like South Side, Citrus Tract.
Exactly, South Side. But Emma was up there as another one. So it's pointing to some of these disparities for sure, and it's quite, it's 31 pages. So I'm not sure if you want to, it's pretty detailed. But I encourage you to look at it because we did spend quite a bit of time in trying to really go through the questions seriously and looking what the impacts may be. We also included a proposal for which sites are most likely to be redeveloped. And we looked at the floor area ratio, the existing buildings to the total value of the land on the parcels and the parcel size. And so that there's a map in the toolkit on page 29 that shows which parcels within each node are more likely to develop first. And some are no brainer, like the KMart site is obviously, meets all the criteria to probably be redeveloped more quickly.
And just wanted to clarify too that based on the equity analysis that the Patton Avenue node with the former Kmart site is the only node that we identified out of all the other urban centers that could have the potential impact that it could have on vulnerable neighborhoods that are adjacent to it. So that's the only node on Patton.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so unless either Gwen or Antoinette has anything else, I think, have you gotten the policy direction that you are seeking? What I've heard is take this out of phase 1, create a phase 2 that includes this and the mall and River Ridge, and put a time frame on it. Like, I don't know if it's 6 months, I don't know if it's a year, but something like that.
Yeah, just keep it out of highway business for a time.
And if for some reason you're saying if for some reason that can't happen, that it will move forward with.
I'd like to talk about it again.
Yeah, I think you need to talk about it again. I mean, I would also, maybe this is novel, but there is a key party in this deal that maybe is not at the table, and that would be the property owner. Could be a very could be a new thing for Ingalls to be in these kinds of conversations with community, but I think it would be very important. Could be very important for them to hear directly and firsthand what the concerns of the neighborhoods are, and again, try to get on the same side of the table answering these questions. I mean, again, Ingalls could solve this problem by whatever development proposal they put forward that helps the city meets its goals, helps the neighborhood, helps address neighborhood concerns, And I would encourage, I don't know if anyone from Ingalls is watching, but I would encourage them to try to become part of these conversations, and encourage you, Todd and Vidila, to maybe reach out to them and see if they would be willing to participate. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. All right. So we are down to our last agenda item, which is public comment. Jenna, do we have anybody on the line?
There's no one in the speaker queue.
Okay. Then I think we are finished. I will just take this moment to say it has been a privilege to chair this committee and do this work. This is such important work, and I'm very fortunate to have been on this committee and in a position to chair it and help push some of these things forward. And thanks very much to all the staff that support this committee, starting with Kathy Ball. You are amazing. And again, Ben, Todd, your staffs, everybody who comes to support us in this work and get it done. Really appreciate all of that.
And Julie, I've served on this committee with you now for 4 years, maybe?
Three for sure.
Oh, well, okay. And really have appreciated your leadership on it. So thank you, and we'll miss you.
Thank you. All right. We'll see y'all tomorrow night. Bye, everyone. We are adjourned, if I need to say that.